Federal Judge Tanya Chutkan just smacked down Donald Trump's lawyer, John Lauro, in the federal court proceeding in the Washington, D.C. criminal case. The superseding indictment was recently unsealed, and this was a scheduling conference. Federal Judge Tanya Chutkan said things like this: Mr. Lauro, Trump's lawyer, Mr. Lawyer, I don't need any more rhetoric about how serious and grave you think this is, to which Mr. Lauro says, it's not rhetoric, I'm just trying to make a legal argument. And then Judge Tanya Chutkan says, look, I don't need to hear you talk about elections or talk about the presidency. I'm not talking about the presidency, Mr. Lauro. What I'm talking about is a 4-count criminal indictment. I am focused on the law. Do you understand me, Mr. Lauro? So this hearing did not go well for Donald Trump, and his lawyers did not do a good job. Let me just break down everything that went down. I want to give a hat tip to our friend Adam Klasfeld. He's an MSNBC contributor, and he's a fellow at Just Security. He does a great job live posting all of the happenings in the court because there's no cameras allowed inside the federal court building. So proceedings took place at 10 a.m. Eastern time today. This was a scheduling conference following the Supreme Court's ruling on absolute presidential immunity. They had to determine how they proceed now after the superseding indictment was unsealed, where special counsel Jack Smith just made a few tweaks to the indictment that was unsealed back in August of 2023 to address the Supreme Court's ruling here. Now, Donald Trump's lawyers wanted to delay any hearings on an absolute immunity motion to dismiss. And Jack Smith's like, why are you trying to delay that? Isn't this something that you want forthwith? Isn't this something that the Supreme Court says to be resolved as a threshold issue? Donald Trump's lawyer's like, well, can we please address the issue of the legitimacy of the special counsel's office first? And then after we brief that, we can push the absolute immunity argument to later on, maybe sometime in 2025. And then even federal judge Tanya Chutkan was like, the whole point of the Supreme Court's ruling was for me, the judge in the district court, to make a fast finding, to approach this forthwith to determine the issues of absolute immunity. And that's what I plan to do. So why is it that you're trying to delay it? We all know the answer right there. So let's talk about the proceedings. All rise. U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan takes the bench and the proceedings start. For the prosecutor, for the government, you have prosecutor Thomas Wyndham, and you had special counsel Jack Smith, who was sitting right behind him. As it was described to me, special counsel Jack Smith was sporting a longer than usual beard. You can take that fact for what it's worth. Judge Chutkan then said, it's been almost a year. You look well rested, Mr. Lauro. Mr. Lauro, John Lauro's the lawyer for Donald Trump. Lauro then cracks a joke that life seemed meaningless without seeing you, Judge Tanya Chutkan, to which Judge Tanya Chutkan laughed and said, well, enjoy it while it lasts, Mr. Lauro. Judge Chutkan described the Supreme Court's immunity decision and described her intentions at today's hearing. She said, I don't intend to finalize a schedule at this hearing, but we will have a scheduling order hopefully issued by the close of business today. Judge Tanya Chutkan then reviewed Donald Trump's waiver of his appearance at the hearing today because it was also scheduled for his arraignment, where a party that's charged would plead not guilty or guilty. And Judge Tanya Chutkan says, oh, I see Mr. Trump is entering a plea of not guilty with respect to all 4 counts, Mr. Lauro, to which Trump's lawyer, John Lauro, said that's right. Judge Tanya Chutkan then described what the prior schedule was before she put the proceedings on hold pending Donald Trump's immunity appeal. Remember, everything was basically stayed since December of 2023. And then Judge Tanya Chutkan says, all right, counsel, I see there are 2 main issues we need to address. The first issue is, how are we going to resolve the remanded immunity issue? The Supreme Court ruled that there is a doctrine of absolute presidential immunity, that a president would be immune from core constitutional functions and official acts, and there's an evidentiary immunity. How do we resolve that here with this superseding indictment? The prosecution, Tom Windham, said, well, Your Honor, I don't think we have a typical situation here because we're now in a place where the Supreme Court has created new law for the first time in American history, recognizing this doctrine of absolute immunity. And Windham argues, look, we need to resolve these immunity issues first. And what we have to do is we need to resolve all of Trump's motions to dismiss at once, because we know Donald Trump is going to be filing what's called an interlocutory appeal. He's going to appeal whatever you do right away. And we just want to limit that to one chance so we could get this show on the road, and that it's not going to be all these other interlocutory appeals happening over and over again. Let's try to be efficient here. So the prosecution proposes prosecutors file a brief on the immunity issue and why they believe Trump should have no immunity, even in light of the Supreme Court ruling. They want to file it within 3 weeks. Later this month, they basically want to file it. And then Trump's lawyer says, look, Your Honor, this is enormously prejudicial to Donald Trump. And one of the things that Lauro says is, look, the Supreme Court found that Donald Trump's conversations with former Vice President Pence were official acts, and therefore, and then Judge Tanya Chutkan cut him off and said, nope, no, I'm going to have to disagree with you and Donald Trump there. They sent that back to me, the federal judge, to figure that out. Then the defense, Trump's lawyers, argue that Judge Tanya Chutkan should find that Donald Trump's conversations with Mike Pence were official acts as a matter of law. Then Judge Chutkan said, Riley, I'm risking reversal no matter what I do here. Chutkan notes that the Supreme Court ordered her to resolve the remaining immunity issues forthwith, and she presses Trump's lawyer John Lauro on why the defense is asking her to review other motions first. John Lauro warns about prosecutors being able to put into the public record at a very sensitive time in our nation's history, which we can't ignore certain types of facts. Then Judge Chutkan let out a sigh, leaned back in her seat at that remark, and she addresses Lauro's remark. I understand that there's an election impending. The judge adds that the election is not relevant here. The court is not concerned about any election schedule, Mr. Lauro. We are concerned about justice and the fact that we have a criminal case before us. And then John Lauro, Trump's lawyer, goes, but there's something unseemly about a rush to judgment, to which Judge Tanya Chutkan says, this case has been pending for more than a year. We're hardly sprinting to the finish line here. Lauro complains more about the government's proposal to file a brief within 3 weeks, and Chutkan replies, well, Mr. Lauro, 3 weeks is certainly not breakneck speed. Lauro then says, it's a quagmire. It's completely prejudicial because they decide what to unseal. It's fundamentally unfair. We've never seen anything like this in a district court before. And the issue with Mike Pence and his conversations with Donald Trump, it's a gateway issue for dismissing the case. So that should be excluded no matter what. And then Judge Tanya Chutkan said, look, the Supreme Court did not say that. They sent it back to me to make these determinations. If the Supreme Court wanted to dismiss the case, they could have done that. They decided not to do that. They've sent it back to me. And then John Lauro says, we're talking about the presidency of the United States. Judge Chutkan says, I'm not talking about the presidency. I'm talking about a 4-count criminal indictment. Then the government goes back up. Tom Windham notes that the Supreme Court's opinion was all about making factual determinations, and that is for this court to determine. Judge Chutkan asks how much of that information the government expects to be under seal. Windham defers to the court to decide what should remain under seal pursuant to the protective order. As Lauro gets back up, Chutkan chides, I don't need any more rhetoric about how serious and grave this is. Lauro responds, it's not rhetoric. It's called legal argument. Then Trump's lawyer, Lauro says, also, we have an illegitimate prosecutor. We have an illegitimate indictment right here. To which Judge Tanya Chutkan says, what are you talking about? There's binding DC Circuit precedent on the issue that special counsels and special prosecutors are allowed, are lawful. I do not believe that Judge Eileen Cannon knew what she was talking about. I don't find Judge Cannon's opinion persuasive at all, Judge Tanya Chutkan said. And then to which John Lauro said, but we were directed to bring this up to you by Justice Clarence Thomas. And then Judge Tanya Chutkan says, she goes, he personally directed you? He told you to tell me that? So you're saying that you're having conversations with Justice Clarence Thomas? What are you talking about? And then Lauro raises more concerns, and Judge Chutkan says, look, I hear all your arguments. I get it. I'm going to issue a scheduling order at the end of today. The special counsel argument that you're making, that special counsels don't exist, that Judge Cannon found, that's not persuasive to me. I don't even want to hear that. I'll come up with a scheduling order, but it's my job as the judge to make the fact findings now about absolute immunity. If the Supreme Court wanted to do what you said, Trump's lawyers, they would have said that specifically. They didn't. The ball's in my court right now. I'll get back to you by the end of today. So that's where we're at. Again, hat tip to Adam Klasfeld for his great reporting. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 4 million subscribers together. Thanks for watching.
Real quick, Meta just changed their algorithm to suppress political content. Please follow our Instagram at MeidasTouch right now as we head towards 400,000 followers so you don't miss a beat.